190 countries that we reach. Can you imagine? I'm sitting here in a little studio in the land of enchantment, in the middle of a desert, north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a gorgeous sky and a beautiful moon, and I see Mars getting closer in the east, in the southeast skies, just over the horizon. It will rise in an hour or two. And it's getting closer and closer, and in July, actually July 27th, Mars will be closer than it has been for 17 years, because of course the two orbits are not circular. Mars is kind of, and Mars is not. So we can get closer to or farther away every 2 years when we have what's called an opposition, meaning it's opposite the sun. And this year is a particularly good opposition. It's little over 35 million miles, which is almost as close as it can get. Not as close as back in 2003. It was closer than it had been for 16,000 years. That's a real number, real calculation. But I mean, we're talking miles. We're not talking thousands of miles or millions of miles. So it doesn't really matter. Optically, it's going to look incredible if you have a decent pair of binoculars. If you have a telescope, that's even better. If you go to various websites on the web, you'll see all kinds of chats and blogs devoted to Mars and the opposition. There's some astonishing imagery coming out of the amateur astronomical community. I mean, the amateur technology now is good, as good as they had at Palomar in the Actually, no, it's much better. Because when you're dealing with film and planetary imaging, the time it takes to take a picture, a second, quarter of a second, 1/250th of a second, the atmosphere moves. Whereas with CCD technology and webcams and all that, you can basically run several minutes of video, high frame digital video. Then the program will pick out those momentary images of thousands of frames where the atmosphere was still and crystal clear. And it's like looking at Mars across a vacuum, across space. Like the digital stuff can remove the effects of the atmosphere. So you get these astonishingly, incredibly high-resolution images of not just Mars, but of everything out there, including the moon. Now, the reason I want to talk a bit about the moon before we get to my guest tonight is we have had another death this afternoon. Alan Bean, the fourth human being to walk on the moon, died at the relatively young age these days of 86. Now, you may not have been following Alan Bean's astronaut career, but you may have been following his artistic career, because when he got back from the moon, this was a Navy veteran, engineer, etc., he turned from the hard sciences. He turned from, left brain stuff to right brain stuff, and he painted an exquisite series of images of him and Pete Conrad on the moon in all different guises, in all different ways. Anyway, I don't want to take a lot of time tonight, but tomorrow night, because of Alan Bean's untimely passing, we have revamped our show. We're going to be doing an Alan Bean artistic commemorative with a number of people that you've heard on this program, particularly Andrew Curry, and going to bring in some surprises. I'm trying to get someone on the show who actually worked with Alan when he was an astronaut, and they were in the program there in Houston. This segues, of course, to item number 2. For those who may not be familiar with how this show works, you go to the insideoftheback.com, that's our website, and you click on that, and that will take you to, if you go to the graphic, which is tonight, April 6th, Gary Williams, click on that, and it will take you to tonight's guest page. Scroll down, regular pictures, and you see a number of items under my items. Number 1 is the airtime obituary. 2 is very interesting because, as you know, we're working on a very comprehensive video compilation of our research that is going to go hand-delivered, hand-carried from us directly to the President of the United States. And we've talked on other shows about nations about this is not a pipe dream, this is absolutely real. Today is about halfway addition, of course, to Club 1945, they got access during the workshop live, and they now can view the recording as part of their club benefits. We're going to open this up to the general public when we get this thing edited, and you'll be able to see the same thing the President of the United States has specifically been set up to see through a mutual friend who is a guy in radio. I've been in New York for quite some time. He's got 100 million or so in Salem, so he and Donald kind of talk the same language, with green. And so he has offered to directly take this to the President and insist that he at least watch the first half hour. So we will see shortly what all that brings to fruition. Apropos of that, item number 2 on tonight's roster in Radio with Pictures, Wilbur Ross, who is the current Secretary of Commerce, has written something on whitehouse.gov that's really fascinating. A moon colony will be a reality sooner than you think. I strongly recommend, we're going to post this tomorrow night as well when we do the Bean Show. I strongly recommend that you kind of take a look at that, because that's part of how we're going to make America and the planet great again, because the riches in them thar hills at so many different levels. Well, we'll talk about all this tomorrow night, but I want to give you a heads up. Tomorrow night we're going to talk about Alan Bean, his extraordinary work as an astronaut on Apollo 12, his extraordinary artistic accomplishments, and some of the things he was telling us, like Emily Dickinson, tell all the truth but tell it slant, that he was telling in his artwork that he never told in a press conference. So for those of you that may have missed our past allusions to Alan Bean, astronaut and artist, you do not want to miss this program, this special program, tomorrow night. Moving on quickly, item number 3 and 4 in our gallery and Radio Pictures is basically about the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. When Robin and I were in Hawaii doing the measurements at Mauna Kea, we actually had to bypass the volcano there in Kilauea because it was dumping lava into the ocean. When that stuff hits the water, you wind up with all kinds of very noxious things you don't want to breathe if you want to stay on this mortal coil a while longer. Things like hydrochloric acid are produced. So that steaming stuff falling off the edge of Hawaii, the big island, you don't want to get too near that. So we did not get to see Kilauea when we were there, which I'm kind of sad about, because I've always wanted to see an active volcano. Now, if you look at items number 4 in Radio Pictures, in my items, we've got some incredible satellite imagery that it was taken by the crop of current state-of-the-art technology in orbit upstairs. We've got a daytime shot, and then Kentia very nicely sized the nighttime shot from the same spacecraft right below it. And so you can see that this material pouring out of Kilauea and streaming down across the landscape through this couple of suburban communities. Lulani, I think, is one. It's headed for the ocean, and it's building Hawaii. This is how the Hawaiian Islands were built. So you can actually see, if you click on this story, there's some links to some astonishing new video. The guy, by the way, who had his leg broken when a lava bomb caught him by surprise as he was babysitting one of his neighbor's houses to make sure that the lava bombs didn't incinerate it by tossing hot lava into the roofs and lighting fires, which is what he was doing. That he got hit in the leg by one of these things, and it broke it right in two, and he thought at the time he would never survive, A, and B, if he did, he wouldn't have a leg. The doctors apparently did an incredible job, and he's going to be walking. It's going to be months, maybe 6 months, but he's going to be walking on his own 2 legs. He's an incredibly fortunate guy. Anyway, item number 5, before we get to my guest, something very mysterious was shot and killed in north central Montana, near Denton. And the reason that I wanted to put this up is because, A, the symbology of the dog stories that are coming out in the news all over the planet is very interesting. Dog and cat stories. You'll see a whole spate of them that are kind of a blip on the radar. But the really interesting thing about this story is that no one can identify, even the experts, the fish and wildlife people. They have no idea what it is, and they've sent DNA samples out, and we may find out something more, or we may not. I just kind of thought it was kind of curious that in our midst, when everything else is going on, these strange cryptozoological stories keep appearing kind of time to time. So, anyway, my guest tonight is a very interesting individual. Turns out that we have a lot in common. He's a radio guy. He lived and worked in Massachusetts. He's worked in radio all over. He's interviewed a number of the people that I know. We were talking before air about Stanton Friedman. We're probably going to talk about the show. So let me give you a kind of a thumbnail sketch, and then we'll get into this evening, because this is one of those evenings people said, you're doing a show on what? Psychics? What the heck do you know, or why are you intrigued with psychics? Well, that's for you to hear in the rest of the 3 hours of this morning. Gary Williams is an award-winning writer and a radio and television host, a working psychic and a working astrologer, as well as the leading authority on the paranormal, having spent something like 40 years researching ghosts, mediums, life after death.
Swamps of Florida. Is it true that more UFOs are seen over a small Scottish village than anywhere else in the world? And is there a secret place in Russia that some people think is heaven on earth? In Mac Maloney's Beyond Area 51, you'll visit more than a dozen top-secret places around the globe. The haunted forests of New Jersey, a valley in Colorado where shadows come alive and humans can fly without wings. And where's the only secret base in America that's not been visited by UFOs? You've heard Mac talk all about these places on his radio show. Now you can read all about them yourself. That's Mac Maloney's Beyond Area 51, Mysteries of the World's Most Forbidden Places. Now on sale at Amazon.
Are you tired of that old broomstick giving out on you at the worst possible times? Then you're going to want to come down to Marla Brooks's Broomstick Emporium, where we buy, sell, and trade all models of broomstick. And while you're here, you're going to want to check out a full line of cauldrons. And remember, gift certificates are sold here for that hard-to-buy-for witch. So come on down to Marla Brooks's Broomstick Emporium. You'll be glad you did. Just off Route 9, past Devil's Playground.
On the Para-X Radio Network, this is New Aeon Now, with New Aeon High Priestess Reverend Lily Alley, head of the Wicked chapter of the Order of Paranormal Exploration, Christine Matza.
And we're back. Well, have I got a story for you? Of course, this is New Aeon Now. I'm Lily Alley. With me, Davon and Christine. And this is a supposed first-person account of a man's death at the Norris Geyser Basin. Okay, this came about online on Reddit in 2016. A guy who calls himself Yellowstone Yoda claims to have been a first responder to the scene, where the sister of the victim showed him a video of the incident. According to him, the man stood staring at a floating nude female figure with translucent skin. The figure was emitting a low hum. The man then fell into the water, lured by the siren. The man, Helen Scott, did die in the hot springs in November of 2016. The video of the so-called siren has never been released. What do you think, Davon?
Well, I waited a long bit of days to go boogie boarding on a geyser, wearing protective, heat resistance diving paraphernalia, but I don't know about seeing a translucent figured siren. Now, one could only assume that was some sort of an otherworldly water sprite type being, and possibly there's an underground race of underwater type chuds that are living there and he disturbed them, in which case, I would have tried to communicate with them most readily and humbly apologize for invading onto their territory, but, probably I would say that if such a thing occurred, maybe he was invading their space in a disrespectful manner. However, it's also possible he was just drowned and got burned up by guys.
Okay, tell us another ghost story from Yellowstone.
It is said that Yellowstone has many ghosts. The most prominent ghosts that are seen today involve unreasonably frequent sightings of picnic baskets being stolen. It's incredible, but every time people have a picnic in this park, their picnic baskets go missing. To this day, no one understands how this is happening.
Stefan, it's you and food again. Okay? I want to hear
It's
about
Yogi!
the bride. I want to
Yogi and
hear about
food.
the headless bride.
Oh, headless brides? Come on. How many talking bears do you see in the forest? All right, you want to hear about headless brides? There is a headless bride, in fact, seen frequently in Yellowstone, who people see walking down the stairs from what's called the Crow's Nest, the Old Faithful Inn. Well, it seems that back in 1915 in New York, this legend started when the owner of a wealthy shipping company had a teenage daughter who was, let's say, a bit of a rebel. Well, she thought of herself as a quite modern woman by the time standards and rejected an arranged marriage that her parents were trying to set up to a young man from another well-to-do family. Instead, heaven forbid, she wanted to marry a significantly older gentleman who actually worked in her house as a servant, is not something her parents were keen to. Her father really thought he had his daughter's best interest in mind by trying to convince her that the servant was a gold digger, not the kind and loving gentleman that she thought she knew. But there was no convincing her, and the young heiress and the old servant went ahead and got married. Well, the dad was heartbroken, but he had a plan. For a wedding gift, he gave them a substantial wedding dowry, and accepting the money came with some agreements that the daughter would not receive any additional support from her family and that they'd leave New York forever. The father was hoping that this agreement would make the servant look back and think maybe this wedding isn't such a good idea, knowing that he wouldn't inherit any money or get a job at the family business. However, the couple agreed to the dowry and moved off from New York to Yellowstone for their honeymoon, and they never came back. They moved into the Old Faithful Inn's room 127, which back then was a New